picking up where we left off last week, I want you to make take notice of this idea of living stones. All the way through the scripture before us, we talk and see of stones. Stones, living stones, where Jesus is called the living stone. We are to be like the living stones, or we are to be like living stones. Jesus Christ is called the cornerstone, the capstone. Seems like Peter, the rock, had a lot to do with stones, or had this in his mind. By the way, he was not in the World Wrestling Federation or anything like that, but he was the Rock, the original one. Peter had this idea going through. Some of you got that. Some of you just didn't think it was funny. What's that guy doing up there joking anyway? Okay, so this idea of living stones filters through his thought. Jesus is the living stone. He is the cornerstone. When we look at the church and see how it is built, the church is built upon the firm foundation of Jesus Christ, on that cornerstone of Jesus Christ. Now, in our way of building in the United States today, the cornerstone is largely symbolic, but in Jesus' day, in Peter's day, the cornerstone really determined the shape and the direction and the quality of the structure. The way that they would measure and build, the common person would, they would put a large, perfect stone on the corner, and then from that corner they would build a wall and build another one and try to make it square with the cornerstone. Now the cornerstone also told of how not only the building would be oriented, but basically how good the building would be. If you start with a rough stone, you get a rough building. If you start with a perfect stone, you get a more near-perfect building. Well, in the church, Jesus is our foundation. He is the cornerstone. He determines what we look like. I don't know if we can blame him for the air conditioning today. I've seen a lot of shiny faces. We look shiny today. But he determines what we look like in the church. Now, isn't this a blessed truth? We don't have to determine who we are. He determines who we are. And he is the foundation upon which the church is built. It is built on Jesus Christ. Now, why is this so important? I've told several people that I could tailor a worship service to the point where I really like it. And me and two other people would probably attend the church because we really liked it. If we start tailoring or building the church on our own preferences or on our own thought process or even on our own understanding, we have built a faulty building and it is not a church. The church is built solely on Christ, through Christ, and by Christ. That is the firm foundation upon which we live. Now, this living stone that became a cornerstone, we are to be like living stones as Christ followers. The word Christian means to be a little Christ. We are to be a little bit of Christ to this world. The idea here is not a foreign idea in the Scripture. We are to be living stones. Stones like Jesus Christ, imitators of Christ, followers of Christ, representatives of Christ. The Apostle Paul says that we're to be ambassadors for Christ. It's the same concept using different illustrations. You and I are to be the living stone that is like Jesus Christ in this world, today. And we are to be built into a spiritual house. We're to be built into a spiritual house. Now, if I had a couple bricks up here and made a wall, say I had about 20 bricks and made a wall here. If I were to take the middle brick out, what would happen to the wall? It might stand for a while, it might fall, but given enough time, it certainly wouldn't be beneficial to the wall that I took a brick out of it. The walls of the church, if we were to go and selectively take a brick or two and just take them out, that would be detrimental to the building eventually. Why? Because we are interconnected as living stones. We are living stones that build up the spiritual house of God. Which means that it is important for each and every one of us to be connected in community with the other. Again, this is not a hidden truth in the Scripture. This is actually a truth that you see quite clearly. The Apostle Paul says it like this, that we are each given spiritual gifts for the building up of the kingdom, for the betterment of one another. If you don't use your spiritual gift, you have hurt the living stones around you. And if they don't use their spiritual gifts, you have helped hurt the living stones around you. And so, as living stones, if we come out of the building and we don't actually have an interconnectedness, we're no good. There's a fallacy out there, and it's the fallacy of the lone wolf Christian. There is no such thing. There is no privatization of the Christian faith. Living stones were made into a structure that all would see, and the structure is dependent upon the stones. Let me say it to you in a different way. The king of Sparta was once bringing in another king from around Sparta, and the king of Sparta was showing this other king all the different things in Sparta. And the king of Sparta kept on saying and praising the wall in Sparta. You know, this city has a huge wall, an impenetrable wall, a wall that is of great defense, of great worth. And the king that was visiting said, I don't see a wall. And he said, oh, you see all these men here? These men are the wall, and each one of them the brick. You see, you are the wall of the church. And each one of you a brick. Each one of you very, very important to the work of Christ today. This gives you value beyond yourself. Let me hasten on to the next point. I see the truth. I see a church that rejects the fallacy of the solitary Christian. There is no such thing as a solitary Christian. We are all part of the community. We're all dependent upon one another. We are imitations of the living stone, and we were built on the foundation of Christ.